Hello, team players. So rogues get a ton of skill feats in Pathfinder 2e, but what about class feats? Today, I'm gonna cover my top 5 class feats you should consider taking if you're playing a rogue. Let's dive in. Starting off at number 5, we have Stay Down. This feat requires you to be a master in athletics. As a reaction, if a foe that is prone attempts to stand up and is within your reach, you can attempt an athletics check against the foe's fortitude DC. On a success, that action does not work, meaning they remain prone. On a critical success, the target can't stand until its next turn. Remember, guys, that prone is off guard, which means sneak attack. And also means -2 to AC against all attacks. Another thing that a lot of people forget is that prone also means a penalty on their attack rolls. So keeping them down as long as possible is amazing. But there are a few problems with this feat. First off is that prerequisites. Since it requires Master in Athletics, it's only really good for ruffian rogues. Secondly, this feat targets the opponent's fortitude DC, and a ton of enemies in Pathfinder 2e have high fortitude DCs. And lastly, using this feat does use your reaction for the round, which means you wouldn't be able to use something like the next feat on this list. Overall, great feat, just with a ton of drawbacks, which is why it's number 5 on this list. And at number 4, we have You're Next. As a reaction, if you reduce an enemy to 0 hit points, you can attempt to demoralize another creature within 60 feet with a +2 circumstance bonus. If you're legendary in Intimidation, you can use this as a free action with the same trigger. So this feat does have some similar drawbacks to the last feat on this list. First, it is a reaction, which means that you're not going to be able to use another reaction like the last feat if you use this. Second, this is a demoralized check, which means once you use this, an enemy is going to be immune to demoralize for basically the rest of the combat. Thirdly, this does target will DC, which means it's going to be hard to use this against enemies that have high will saves, such as spellcasters. And lastly, this feat only works when you reduce a foe down to 0 hit points. So this is one you're not going to use too often. However, I do think this is a better feat than the last one for a few reasons. First, enemies with high will saves are a lot less common than enemies with high fortitude saves. Second, because this only requires trained in Intimidation, you don't really need a high charisma to use this effectively. Third, a circumstance bonus to anything is extremely rare. And if you're legendary in Intimidation, you don't need to use your reaction to do this. And lastly, fear is a much better condition than off guard is. True, as a rogue, you want enemies off guard to use so you can do your sneak attack. However, the Dread Striker feat at level 4 allows you to do both, and Frighten is a penalty to literally everything instead of just AC. Meaning, it lowers other defenses such as saving throws and not just AC, but more importantly, it also lowers their offense. Meaning, it's easier for you to hit them and harder for them to hit you. Again, this is a pretty amazing feat, but it's got a lot of drawbacks, which is why it's number 4 on this list. At number 3, we have Sidestep. This reaction is triggered when an opponent fails or critically fails a strike against you. You can redirect that strike to any creature that is adjacent to you. The triggering foe re-rolls the attack roll against the target of your choice. This feat is fantastic for a couple of reasons. First, the feat does not say that you have to redirect it to an ally, meaning you can make enemies attack each other. Or you can simply, redirect the attack to the tank, who, depending on the build, might want to get hit. But this feat does have its drawbacks. First, they get to re-roll the attack roll, Meaning if you redirect the attack roll to an ally, they could crit. Or if you redirect it to an enemy, they could just miss. Secondly, this is a reaction, and you only get one of those per turn. Thirdly, whoever you redirect the attack to has to be adjacent to you and within reach of the attack. Meaning, if you're just standing there by yourself, you can't use this feat. But overall, great feat with a few drawbacks. Just not as many as some of the other feats I've covered in this list, which is why it's higher. At number 2, we have The Harder They Fall. This essentially gives you the critical success effect of trip every time you trip someone. And if you critically succeed, you also deal your sneak attack damage. As if rogues didn't already have a huge incentive to trip people, this one gives them even more. Remember, prone equals off guard to everyone. But this feat does have one downside, and that is this feat only works if you trip an already off guard foe. Meaning this feat only comes online if you have another way of making the foe off guard, such as flanking with an ally or using Dread Striker. And of course you do have to succeed on the trip, but trip targets reflex DC, not fortitude DC. And that's usually lower than their fortitude DC. Not always, but usually. So good feat with one drawback, which is why it's number 2 on this list. For the number 1 spot, I've got a little bit of a complicated feat, so listen closely. Inspired Stratagem seems like it's for mastermind rogues, but any rogue can take it. During your daily preparations, you can choose up to 5 allies. Later that day, if an ally that you selected rolls an attack roll or a skill check, you can use a reaction to allow that ally to roll twice and take the better of the 2 results. So basically, advantage, if you're coming from 5e. However, that particular ally is then immune to Inspire Stratagem for the rest of the day. Advantage is a very rare and precious thing in Pathfinder 2e. And giving it to each of 5 allies once a day is pretty nice. This is my favorite rogue feat for a reason. This is quite literally the epitome of teamwork. I can't think of a single other class that has a feat like this. But maybe you guys can let me know in the comments if there is one. But like all feats on this list, it does have its downsides. First, it only works on attack rolls and skill checks. So, no saving throws, unfortunately. But again, it's a reaction, so it is a once per round thing. But that's really it for its downsides, which is why it takes the number 1 spots. And that's it for the list. But I love hearing from you guys, so let me know down in the comments of any good rogue feats I didn't cover in this video. You can also get Google Sheets for all my teamwork builds by pledging to me on Patreon, or if you're interested in once-a-month character creation streams, you can become a member of this channel. Links are in the description below. If you're interested in the new Nephilim heritage, you can check out this video here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, teamwork is vital. It helps us solve problems.